أجمعين ثم ما بعد. Continuing in the Tafsir classes, we were gone for a couple of weeks. The discussion that we left off on was discussing some of the accusations that people have made against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we wanted to continue with those discussions and to go on to the next response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. So the next ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says, وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. وَقَالُوا, and they said, اتَّخَذَ, Allah took for Himself, اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ, Allah took for Himself, وَلَدًا, a child. Now the word وَلَدًا, it literally means a son, but because this ayah, but it can also refer to any children. If you have 2 sons and 2 daughters, you say هؤلاء أولادي, these are my children. So walad doesn't necessarily mean a boy or a girl. It can be referred to any of the children as long as you're referring to them in a plural sense. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَقَالُوا, and they said. Who said? This is in reference to 3 groups of people. The first is al-Yahud, the Jews. That's the main topic of the surah. But then, if you notice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought into the discussion the Christians. So the second people that said that Allah has a child are the Christians. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, He brought into the conversation before, we talked about this, how they said, how He brought into the conversation the kuffar, which are the mushrikeen, those that don't have a religion that was originally sent by Allah Azza wa Jal. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He referred to them by saying, that many of the people of the scripture wish that you would go back to being kuffar, meaning mushrikeen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought all of the different groups that are against Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam into the discussion. And also, they were already brought into the discussion previously because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about who is more unjust than those that prevent the masajid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being used for worship. We mentioned how this refers to the Jews, the Christians, and the mushrikeen as well. So this is also in reference to those 3 groups. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They said that Allah has taken unto Himself a child, subhanahu, far above. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far above doing something like that. بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Actually, to Allah belongs everything that's in the heavens and the earth. Everything that's in the heavens and the earth already belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is a response to the Jews who said that Uzair is the son of Allah. And it's a response to the Christians who obviously claim divinity unto Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. And it's a response to the mushrikeen. And what did the mushrikeen claim? The mushrikeen claimed that the angels are the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They used to say, Banatullahi al-mudallalat, the spoiled daughters of Allah Azza wa Jal. Na'udhu billah. And so what did they used to say? They used to say that the daughters, the angels, the daughters of Allah, when we worship our idols, the jinn are going to go to the angels and convince the angels, and the angels are going to go force Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. So they believe that the angels actually had power over Allah. So it wasn't like a true father-daughter relationship where he can choose to say yes and choose to say no. No. They believe that the angels can force their will on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is shirk. This is polytheism. And it's shirk in rububiyyah. The rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal is that the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, the provider, and that sort of thing, and that He's one, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the overpowering will over everybody. Whatever you will, Allah will. And if your wills don't coincide, Allah's will is overpowering you. But when you start to claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has daughters that can force their way on Allah Azza wa Jalla, that means you have shirk. So that's the origin of shirk. The origin of shirk is when you start to believe that there's someone that has power over this creation, over any aspect of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, independently of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Independently of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a key point. Because we believe that Isa alayhi salam was given the power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fashion a bird a clay in the form of a bird and then blow onto it and it becomes a real bird. And a person would fall dead. And Isa alayhi salam would bring the person back to life. Okay? But do we believe that Isa had the independent power to do that? No, he was not independent. It was not from himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the ability to do that. That's why in the Quran, what does Allah Azza wa Jalla say? أني أخلق لكم من الطين كهيئة الطير فأنفخ فيه فيكون طيرا بإذن الله. بإذن الله. That I take a piece of clay and I fashion it into the shape of a bird and I blow onto it and it becomes a real bird by the permission of Allah. بإذن الله. That's it. So these mushrikeen, they don't believe that there's something called independent, dependent power on Allah. No, it's all independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's in one aspect. So you can't say, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran that if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they would say Allah. Yeah, that's true. They would say Allah because they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. But then if you ask them who takes the lives of human beings, they would say Manat. That's the God of death, and that's independent of Allah. And who intercedes? They say the angels, and that's independent of Allah. So you can't take one ayah and say that this ayah proves that they were true monotheists, muwahhidun. At least in one aspect of Tawheed, they had true. No, they didn't have in any aspects. They believe that there were multiple gods, and all of them have power over different things. And they believe that that the jinn, yu'jizun Allah haraban, that they can flee and rush away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah can't catch them. Isn't this overpowering the will of Allah Azza wa Jal? If somebody can overpower the will of Allah Azza wa Jal, you really believe that person has tawheed? This is a common mistake that people make today. They say the mushrikeen of Mecca had tawheed. No, they didn't. Abu Jahl, I promise you, he believed that the jinn could overpower Allah and run away from him. And that the angels, if he prayed to his idol, the angels will go to Allah and force Allah to forgive him. And he believed that al-Manat, that Manat, the god is a goddess of death. And so that's why they prayed to him. So these are the beliefs of these people. And so the same applies to the Christians. The Christians don't have the belief of the Muslims about Jesus alayhi salam. We believe in that aspect of bi'idhnillah, by the permission of Allah. And the Christians come and they say, no, He is Allah. So He gets to do whatever He wants. And so it doesn't need the permission of Allah. Okay? So He's independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's independent of the Father. And He's independent of the Holy Ghost. And all of them are independent of each other. But all of them are one and the same. So we're going to go through some discussions on this, inshallah ta'ala. Because there's important ayat. There's 3 ayat when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have to keep in mind here. 3 ayat that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that we have to keep in mind. The first ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in Surah Al-Mu'minun, He says, مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ وَلَدٍ. Allah has not taken a child. وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَهٍ. Nor is there a God with Him. Okay. إِذَن, because if that were the case, لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَهٍ بِمَا خَلَقٍ. Every single one of those gods that I just mentioned would have taken dominion of what they've created themselves. So this ayah proves that from the Islamic perspective and from the human rational perspective, the son of or the child of a goat is a goat. Child of a human is a human. Child of a god is a god. And so a god can't have a second child. Can't have a child because that means there's 2 gods. That's it. That's the Islamic perspective. If you say that a human produced a giraffe and what's produced from a god is a human, then what you've said is one of 2 things. Either that human is uncreated because Allah is uncreated. A god can't have a beginning. Allah is uncreated. Okay. Or you're saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Himself limited because He needs a son to do work for Him as well. All of these are refuted by Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the end of Surah Al-Isra, He says, وَقُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ. Say Alhamdulillah, الَّذِي لَمْ يَتَّخِذْ وَلَدًا, that He didn't take a son or a child. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ شَرِيكٌ فِي الْمُلْكِ, and nobody is his partner in his kingdom. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ وَلِيٌّ مِنَ الذُّلِّ, and he has no assistance from somebody because he's so incapable. This is all refuting the mushrikeen, responding to the mushrikeen. These are the claims they made, that Allah has a son and that he has sharik fil mulk, he has a partner in the kingdom, and he has waliyu min al-dhul, he has a supporter because of his own incapability. Then he says at the end, وَكَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا, and then say Allahu Akbar, because Allah is greater than to have any of those things. So that was their argument. So that's the first thing that we go from as Muslims. So if a Christian comes and talks to you, you tell them this. You tell them, is Jesus the Son of God? Yes. Is he a different being? Yes, he is. Therefore, you believe in two gods. Minimum. That's it. And they have no response to that. Instead, they go through all sorts of mumbo jumbo about, no, they're separate. There's a human aspect and then there's a non-human aspect. That's all nonsense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invalidated any possibility of a second God. So Isa alayhi salam, if he's the son of God, then he's a second God. And Allah Azza wa Jal has eliminated every possibility of there being a second God. In 3 ayat. So in the first ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ مَعَهُ آلِهَةٌ كَمَا يَقُولُونَ إِذًا لَبْتَغَوْا إِلَى ذِي الْعَرْشِ سَبِيلًا. If Allah Azza wa Jal, there's other gods with Allah, they would have tried to find a way to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning what? To have dominion. So that ayah is responding to the claim that, or the point of this ayah is to say that if there are two gods, then they're going to fight with each other over stuff. Right? This is the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal. The other one is going to want to take the throne. So that's the first ayah that we have to keep in mind. The second ayah, somebody could say, okay, fine. If there's two gods that disagree, then that's a big problem. Who's going to overcome the other one? Sure. But what if they agree? Okay. If they agree, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed another ayah. He says that if there were other gods in the heavens and the earth, لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ, then everything قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهِ لَفَسَدَتَا, that the heavens and the earth would become corrupted. It would ruin everything. And I'll explain how. Even if they agree, it destroys everything. Everything we know about reality, everything we know about logic, everything we know about rationality, religion, destroys everything. So that's the second assumption. The third assumption is they said, okay, they don't disagree and they don't agree. One king rules half and the other God rules the other half. Right? One God rules the east of the northern hemisphere, and one rules the southern hemisphere. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, to respond to this, إِذًا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَهٍ بِمَا خَلَقْ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. That after a while they would have each taken away what they created, and it would have been independent of the other, and then they would start to cause conflict with each other over it again as well. So let's go through each one of these. So let's, and this is very, very technical, but you have to understand that the scholars, they really proved that Tawheed is the only, rational option. The only one that the human mind should even think as being possible. Okay, our deen is based on, these ayat that we just mentioned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is arguing to us from our aql, from the aspect of aql. Because it's very easy, we can just say, Allah said in the Quran, there's only one God. That's fine. For the Muslim, that's fine. For the Muslim, that's fine. وَإِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهُ وَاحِدٌ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ. And your God is one God. There's no God but He. It's easy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew, of course, that there are people that believe in two gods. And so He mentioned these ayat to clarify to people how that's not a possibility. So if there's two identical gods, as the Christians claim, and all of them are managing, they're all managing the universe. Okay? Now, both of them would either both of them would be incapable. Both of them would eliminate their statuses as a god. Whether they agree, whether they disagree, whether they divide up their dominion or their domains, doesn't matter. Both of them are not gods. Why? Okay, so who decided that there's two gods? Did someone else decide for them? I appoint you as two gods. Okay, then that means that they are both being forced into something. Right? Somebody else decided. I am going to compel you into being a god. And you are in charge of this or that. So, from the definition of Allah Azza wa Jal, and what we know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what it means to be truly to be the divine subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think that anybody can force Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do anything? No. Okay, so that option just eliminated altogether. There's no possibility of it. So many ayats from the Quran. Ayat al-Kursi. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما. Who is the one that can intercede with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without his permission? ولا يشفعون إلا لمن ارتضى. And they can only, the angels can only intercede for those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is already pleased with. Okay, so there's nobody that's going to compel Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into anything. Okay, but what if it was by their own choice? Well, let's say that they disagree. So let's say that Amr, me, I exist. One God wants to create Amr and the other one doesn't want to create Amr. Okay, so either both of them will be fulfilled at the same time and then there'll be two Amrs. Right? So they either create the entire thing, right? So one God creates the entire thing. The other one, is he going to create the entire thing as well? No. He's going to create another one. After it's already been created, how do you create something? Right? You can create two twins, but you can't create two instances of the same person. It's not possible. Okay, so they agreed. They want to both create Amr. And so one of them did and the other one didn't. Or neither of them did. Okay, so if neither of them did, then they both are unable they both are not gods, because a God should be able to create at will, according to his irada subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to his will. He should be able to create whatever he wants. And any God that can't create whatever he wants when he wants is not a God worthy of worship. So therefore, we eliminate the other God and we say, no, the other God is not worthy of worship. So what remains? Allah. That's it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he created Amr. The other God that you claim unto Allah Azza wa Jalla, he wanted to create another Amr. He didn't want me to be created, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overpowered his will, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the real God, the other one is a false God. This is all from the ayah. Or one of them, this is the one that we just mentioned, one of them would be fulfilled, the will of one of them would be fulfilled and the other one wouldn't, and so the other one is imperfect, and the one that actually created it, that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other one is not a God. Okay, but what if they agree, we said? So if they agree, then it still doesn't work because of what we said before. Because of what we said before. They both agree to create Amr. Either they both create Amr fully, and that's not possible. You can't create two instances of the exact same thing. Okay, the exact same being. Or one created half and the other one created half. Okay, then they're both incapable of creating something fully by themselves. Those are not gods that are worthy of worship. So if they have to cooperate to do it, then that means that one alone is incapable, right? If you say that you need a man and a woman to produce a child, that means a man by himself is deficient. He's deficient. He can't produce a child on his own. And a woman by herself is deficient in the sense that she can't produce a child on her own. You need the union of both. And so if that's what your argument about Allah Azza wa Jalla is, that's the God you want to worship, that he can't even create something by himself, he needs the assistance of someone else. And so then when you say, La ilaha illallah, there's no God worthy of worship except Allah, is that a God that's worthy of worship? Isa alayhi salam, is he worthy of worship? Apart from the fact that he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the respect that we give Isa alayhi salam. But it's a far difference between saying Isa alayhi salam is a prophet of Allah, we respect him and we honor him and we say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and we say alayhi salam and we talk about his mother in the Quran and we do all this, versus saying, and so he's a God. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a bigger insult against Allah Azza wa Jal to claim to Allah Azza wa Jal a second God. And it's not an insult at all to Isa alayhi salam to say that he is an incapable man, just like the rest of us. Just like Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah Azza wa Jal talks to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who is the most honorable of creation, to Allah Azza wa Jal. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You don't guide whomever you love. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whomever he wishes. He tells Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You didn't throw your arrow when you cast your arrow. Allah did it for you. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is incapable. Isa alayhi salam is incapable. We all have this as part of being the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, if they divided up the dominion of Allah subhanahu, everything in the world, one is the northern hemisphere and one is the southern hemisphere, then we have to ask the question. Now we have two gods. One is creating north. One is creating controlling south. One is controlling north. One is controlling south. So then we have to ask the question: that God that you suppose that is the God of the north, okay, is he capable of controlling the south at any given point? Is he able to go and overcome the other one and take it over? Okay, if one is capable and the other one isn't, it would invalidate the divinity of the incapable one and the capable one. Why? Because if you're saying that there's two gods, they have to be equal, right? They have to be equal. And so if one of them is incapable and the other one is equal to it, what's equal to incapable? Incapable. So both of them are incapable. And so therefore, neither of them deserve to be worshipped. Okay, now the capability could involve creation. Okay, but that, again, the problem it creates is redundancy. Redundancy is impossible in the world that we see. It's impossible in our minds. It's impossible. It's not a humanly possible thing. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَفَسَدَتَ. That you would corrupt all of the heavens and the earth if you said that there's two things that can be created, or one thing that can be created, the exact thing can be created by two different people. It's not possible. We can help each other. I can hold a hammer and you hold a hammer and we both hit at the same time. But my action of hitting was done by me. You can't do my action of hitting. Okay? Because that's already been come into existence. It's tahsil hasil, they call it. Tahsilu hasil. It's redundant. Something's already happened. You can't bring it into existence again. You can redo another action, another instance of it. I can say, Allahu Akbar. That's it. That one is over. It's not. You couldn't say that Allahu Akbar for me, that we were both doing it. We can't cooperate in saying that Allahu Akbar. You can say your own, I can say my own. And then once it's gone, I have to do it again. Now I have to say Allahu Akbar again. And that's a second instantiation of Allahu Akbar. So this is what is talked about in these ayat. This is what is talked about in these ayat. The ayat when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that had there been in the heavens and the earth other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they both would be ruined. It's because you're ruining how the realities of existence work. And that's something that we have to understand too. The realities of existence, they stem from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his divinity. So the concept of impossible things are only existing in your mind. They don't exist in real life. And what I mean by impossible is something that produces something contradictory, right? So in my mind, I can imagine the concept of somebody sitting and standing at the same time. I can imagine, I just said it, so I can picture, I can conceptualize, I can understand that there's something that is impossible, which is somebody sitting and standing at the same time. It only exists in your mind. It doesn't exist in real life. It doesn't exist in real life. And that's, the deen never contradicts any of those things. Right? So there's never going to be any time in our religion that, or in any religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down, that contradicts the basics of, for example, 1 + 1 = 2. If there's a book that comes down from, and people claim this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that book says 1 + 1 = 1, or 1 + 1 + 1 = 1, then you can know that that's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can it be from Allah Azza wa Jal? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world. He created all the laws of physics, all these laws that we live by. If 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1 is a reality, you've ruined the entire world. Imagine how many buildings would collapse if 1 plus 1 plus 1 equaled 1 and not 3. How much engineering is based on this concept of just putting 1 plus 1? That concept alone, how much of engineering is based on that? So think about it, take it back to the original principles, which is, let's start with 1 plus 1 equals 2. Everybody knows that. If you get rid of 1 plus 1 equals 2, and you say that 1 plus 1 equals 1, you've ruined the entire world. The building blocks of all of engineering that we know, everything that we know is 1 plus 1 equals 2. So this is what it means when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَفَسَدَتَ لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَ. It would ruin this world as you see it. And so this is an appeal to us, for us to use, our minds when it comes to the other religions and the other aqa'id, the other belief systems. It's important for us to use our minds. The concept of 2 gods would ruin everything. Because especially in the way that the Christians articulate it. Especially in the way that the Christians articulate it. At least the mushrikeen, they recognized that having that these are all not just one God in different manifestations. They were just dividing everything up, right? Oh, this is Manat, it's the goddess of death, and this is the angel, and this is in charge of intercession, and this is the angel of rain, and this is and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of course the creator of the heavens and the earth. And so they were going around the Kaaba and saying what? They were saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik labbaik la sharika lak labbaik. And then they were adding on illa sharikan huwa lak tamlikuhu wa ma malak. Except for the partner that you've chosen. Tamlikuhu, you own him, yes, you own him. Wa ma malak, and you own everything that it owns, but still it can force its way upon you. So you have to understand that they couldn't grasp this concept of all of these beings, the 360 idols that are in the Kaaba. They weren't believing that these were all manifestations of Allah Azza wa Jal. The Christians believe that. And so the Christian belief is actually worse in that sense than the mushrikeen, than the belief of the mushrikeen. Because the mushrikeen, at least, once you clarify to them and you show to them and you define for them, okay, لو كان هؤلاء آلهة ما وردوها. لو كان هؤلاء آلهة ما وردوها. For example, one of the ayats, if you go to the mushrik and you tell him, listen, I'm taking this God that you have, I'm going to throw it into a fire and it's going to be destroyed. If that was a God, ما وردوها, they wouldn't have went into the fire. What kind of God can't defend itself? And then the mushrik will say, and he'll say, yeah, that's a good point. And Musa alayhi salam wanted to do this as well. We're going to come to this in Surah Taha, inshallah. When Musa alayhi salam wants to eliminate as-Samiri and all of his influence and everything, right? The ijl, the calf, lahu khuwar, that had that roar. What did Musa alayhi salam, he said, وَانظُرْ إِلَىٰ إِلَهِكَ الَّذِي ظَلْتَ عَلَيْهِ عَاكِفًا لَنُحَرِّقَنَّهُ ثُمَّ لَنَنْسِفَنَّهُ فِي الْيَمِّ نَسْفًا. He said, look at that God that you claimed, that you were secluding yourself with and doing tawaf with and praying to and saying this is the God of Musa, but Musa forgot. He says, لَنُحَرِّقَنَّهُ, we're going to burn it. ثُمَّ لَنَنْسِفَنَّهُ فِي الْيَمِّ نَسْفًا, and then we're going to take the ashes and cast them into the ocean. Why? إِنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمُ اللَّهُ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ. Because your God is Allah, one. There's no God but He. Musa alayhi salam is using the destruction of this idol to prove Tawheed. Again, we go back to Ibrahim alayhi salam. The same thing. What did Ibrahim alayhi salam do? He took a staff, or he took a stick, and he broke the idols. And then he broke the idols. And then they went to Musa alayhi salam, to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and they said, they went to check on their idols the next day, and they said, "Man fa'ala hada bi alihatina?" Who did this to our gods? Imagine the contradiction in that statement. Who did this to our God? If it was a God, there's nobody doing anything to it. Who did this to our gods? قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. They said, we heard this young man, he was talking about these gods and his name is Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so, what did they say? I'm going to pull up the ayat so we can read them correctly. قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. So they said, قالوا فأتوا به على أعين الناس لعلهم يشهدون. They said, okay, bring Ibrahim alayhi salam in front of everybody so that they can witness to this. They said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, أنت فعلت هذا بآلهتنا يا إبراهيم? Did you do this to our gods, O Ibrahim? قال بل فعله كبيرهم هذا. He said, no. Look at these smaller gods was destroyed by the bigger God, and he left the biggest one, the biggest idol that they had, he left it standing. So he could say, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was the big idol. He went and destroyed all the other ones. فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ إِن كَانُوا يَنْطِقُونَ. Ask them if they can speak. Ibrahim alayhi salam is just building evidence after evidence after evidence. If you wanted to just you want to teach Tawheed, look at Ibrahim alayhi salam. Look at these ayat. We just spent like 35 minutes talking about 3 ayat because of how deep they are. What is the argument that's being made here by Allah Azza wa Jal? Ibrahim alayhi salam, what is he saying? Number 1, your idols got destroyed. How can they be God? Number 2, your idols got overpowered by another one of the idols. Number 3, your idols can't even express themselves. إِن كَانُوا يَنْطِقُونَ. If they can talk, go ask them. فَرَجَعُوا إِلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So they went back to themselves and they said, you are the ones that were wrong for doing this. ثُمَّ نُكِسُوا عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمْ. And then they felt dumb, or they felt confused. They felt dumb in that moment. Imagine at home your kid. He breaks something. He breaks the lamp in the house, right? And then you ask him, what happened to the lamp? And he says, the couch kicked it over. Go ask the couch. And then imagine you turn to the couch and you start looking at the couch like you're going to start questioning it. Afterwards, you should really feel dumb after that. You should really feel like a low intelligence person. What do you mean you're looking at a couch to get an answer out of it? Obviously, the couch didn't do anything because it's not an animate object. So then they said to themselves, they felt dumb, and they said, لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ. You know, مَا هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْطِقُونَ. These guys can't speak. So then Ibrahim a.s. took his chance. قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ. So you're worshipping other than Allah something that can't harm you nor benefit you? أُفٍّ لَكُمْ. Uff to you. Doesn't need a translation. Uff to you. And to what you worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the next statement of contradiction. قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ وَانْصُرُوا آلِهَتَكُمْ. They said, burn Ibrahim alayhi salam and defend your gods. Why do they need defense? Why do they need defense? Why do you need someone to stand up and defend you? If you're Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Jalla wa ala doesn't need our defense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't even be harmed, can't even, be harmed in speech. Even a person that says foul things about Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not harmed by that. وَلَا تَضُرُّهُ شَيْئًا. Right? That you cannot harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the least. You say whatever you want, do whatever you want, it doesn't harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَشَأْ يُذْهِبَكُمْ أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ وَيَأْتِ بِآخَرِينَ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, He gets sick of us, and we're not making tawbah, we're not accepting this deen, we're not following this deen, okay, He'll just wipe out the entire planet and He'll bring in other people. And those people will commit mistakes, but they'll ask Allah for forgiveness in the end. And this is the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, had you not been people that were error prone, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have eliminated all of you and would bring about people that are error prone, that make mistakes, but they make tawbah, and then He can forgive them. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yuridu an yatuba alaykum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants to forgive us. As part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us. So all of this discussion about وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They said that Allah took unto Himself a child. So we mentioned the way to respond to this is to say, Subhanah, Allah is far above that. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala far above that? What does a child imply? A child implies, first of all, that it's of the same nature of the father. A human baby is of the same nature as the human father. So Allah is far above having a child that is also going to be a deity, a God. Allah is far above that. And then why else, especially in the old times, why do people have sons? Why are people happy when they have sons? Right? Imagine you're a farmer in the desert, you're a farmer anywhere, and you have 9 daughters and you have no sons. You have good luck keeping your crops going when you're 75 years old and all of your daughters are married off and you have no assistants. Okay? The reality is that, and especially in those old times, and even till today, there's something called a wage gap for a reason, right? A woman is going to take 9 months of maternity leave. A woman is going to take, and so there's a wage gap because the man is going to be overall at the same role. There's going to be more productive for a longer period of time. So why is it the case that we do aqiqah, we do 2 males, 2 sheep for a male and 1 for a female? It's because of this reason. It's because of understanding how much of a benefit, especially in those old times, and especially in nowadays, even nowadays, if you really look at the statistics carefully, in those old days, how much of a benefit is a son going to be to a farmer? Imagine you have 9 sons taking care of your farm, and you have land, and your son builds his house there, and your other son builds his house there, and your other son builds his house there, and they're living as a community, and as the father gets old, 75, 60, he doesn't have to work on the farm anymore, all the sons are working, and then they're teaching there. That's how it works. That's how it works. You don't get that benefit out of a daughter. And there's no shame in that. There's other benefits in a daughter. The Messenger ﷺ says if you have 2 daughters, you go to Jannah, if you raise them correctly. Or 3 daughters, you go to Jannah, if you raise them correctly. But we're just talking about the realities of human life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, subhanahu, He's above that. Allah Jalla wa ala doesn't need a child to fulfill His legacy. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfills His legacy by sending prophets alayhimu salatu wassalam, and they act in accordance to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends prophets is so that we, the Muslims, we, the human beings, can see these prophets and see their miracles and say, this is from Allah Azza wa Jalla, I should follow this. بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So to Allah belongs everything in the heavens and the earth. And notice in this ayah, Allah Jalla wa ala doesn't say بَلْ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that everyone in the heavens and the earth, because men is actually more specific. It refers only to animate objects. But ma refers to animate objects and inanimate objects. So a table, a person, refers to everything. Goat, a sheep, all of it. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns everything in the heavens and the earth, including Isa alayhi salam, and including those idols that you claimed unto Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a dominion over them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dominion over Uzair, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a dominion over everything that you associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, Bel, no. Actually, the fact of the matter is that all of those things are controlled by Allah Azza wa Jal, are under His will. They can't do anything without His permission. Isa alayhi salam, أني أخلق لكم من الطين كهيئة الطير فأنفخ فيه فيكون طيرا بإذن الله. If there was no idhn, permission from Allah Azza wa Jal, Isa alayhi salam would take some clay, fashion it into a bird, blow onto it, and nothing would happen. Because that permission wasn't granted. وَأُبْرِئُ الْأَكْمَهَ وَالْأَبْرَصِ, and I cure the blind, and I cure baras, which some call as leprosy. It's not leprosy. It's actually like a different skin disease. There's an English name for it, which I can't remember, but it's not leprosy. وَأُبْرِئُ الْأَكْمَهَ وَالْأَبْرَصِ, I cure the blind and those that have the skin diseases. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. وَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا تَأْكُلُونَ وَمَا تَدَّخِرُونَ, and I can tell you by the permission of Allah Azza wa Jalla as well, what you're eating and what you're keeping in your households. This is Isa alayhi salam. ذَلِكَ عِيسَى ibn Maryam قَوْلَ الْحَقِّ الَّذِي فِيهِ يَمْتَرُونَ. That is Isa ibn Maryam, the statement of truth about which people are arguing with each other. What are you arguing about? مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ وَلَدٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not taken a child. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes Isa alayhi salam, ذَلِكَ عِيسَى the قَوْلَ الْحَقِّ الَّذِي فِيهِ يَمْتَرُونَ. مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ أَن يَتَّخِذَ مِنْ وَلَدٍ. It's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take unto Himself a child. إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا, when He decides a matter, All Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to do is يقول kun. He says kun, and it is. Why does Allah Jalla wa ala, with the power and the ability that, and the mastery over the heavens and the earth, all He has to say is kun, and everything exists? Why does He need a son? And so that responds to the claim of the Christians. He needed His son to go to the earth and to sacrifice. He needed to send Himself into the body of another person and then have people kill Himself so that He can protect human beings from Himself. Come on. 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. If you don't believe in these facts, you're going to ruin the world. Or if these facts weren't as they are, then the world would be ruined. And if you don't believe in them, you're clinically insane. Right? So that's why they say, مَنْ أَنْكَرَ الْمَعْلُومَ مِنَ الْعَقْلِ بِالضَّرُورَةِ فَهُوَ مَجْنُونَ. If you reject basic human facts, you're clinically insane. You're just insane. That's it. There's no other word to put for you. If I come and tell you, I say, hey, it's 1 + 1. What is it? 11. You take the 1 here and you put it next to the 1 here. You add them together, it became 11. That's what we call in Arabic majnoon. It's called a crazy person. And imagine billions of people don't even ask these questions. And then they come here and they sit in the pastors and they come and sit in the masjid and you tell them, can you just solve this math equation for me? And they say, no, we can't understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we can see a human figure walking around and sleeping, and he has to sleep because he's tired. You're telling me that we can't understand the basics of mathematics, but we can have to try to understand how is it that this person that you're claiming to be a God why does he have to go to sleep? Because the God that I worship, لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. He doesn't even get drowsy. Why do I have to worship him? How does he deserve to be worshipped? He has to sleep. And so you ask them these basic questions and they just tell you what? No, don't ask. Don't ask questions. Just believe. Believe in this. Why do I have to believe in a sacrifice? Why? What is going to be ruined in this dunya if I don't believe in a sacrifice? Nothing. You don't believe in a sacrifice and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to forgive everybody by His own will? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whatever. شَفَاعَتِي لِأَهْلِ الْكَبَائِرِ مِنْ أُمَّتِي. The Messenger ﷺ goes on the day of resurrection and he says, oh Allah, forgive those that committed major sins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to forgive them or chooses not to forgive them. It's up to His choice. It's not about what did they sacrifice. Did a human being die for me to have to forgive them? Did somebody die for this? Somebody had to die for this. This person committed zina. So someone else, this person committed zina. So that other guy over there has to die so that I can forgive this guy. That's the definition of a just God? That's adil? Al-adil? As we describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are some of the, they call them barahin al-tawheed. Burhan in the Arabic language is like, it refers to the strongest level of proof that nobody can, the only time that you try to deny it is mukabara. You're just being obstinate, you're just being arrogant. And you know it's right, like, you're driving on the highway and your wife tells you get off at this exit and you know it's the right exit. And you missed it, but you don't want to admit that you were going too fast. So you say, that's the wrong exit. She's like, that's the right exit. What are you talking about? And you say, no. The real exit is 20 miles down. You just don't want to admit that you're wrong. So that's called mukabara, right? Just say, oh yeah, I missed the exit. Let me get off and go. No. Mukabara is to know the truth and then absolutely deny the truth while also knowing and acknowledging that you're denying a truth. So this is what these people believe in. And then we have the barahin of tawheed. Very easy to explain. Very easy to explain. They disagree, who's in charge in the end of the day? They agree, it's not possible. You can't create two things of the same, two things of the same exact thing. Two amrs, exact, me. Not me and somebody looks just like me, a twin. No. Me, twice, doesn't work. Doesn't work. Just like I tell you right now, say Allahu Akbar, the same Allahu Akbar twice, doesn't work. You can say Allahu Akbar and then a second one and a third one, but each one of those can't happen at the same time. So how is there two gods agreeing on creating something? Doesn't work. Basic facts. We ask Allah to guide us to the straight path. Alhamdulillah, we went over the evidences of Tawheed. It's just, we did one ayah today, but this was extremely important because of the different types of shirk that exist in this dunya, and we have to, repudiate the shirk. At the end of the day, our deen is based on La ilaha illallah, there's no God but Allah. And that's what we explained, alhamdulillah, with sufficiency, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah to guide us to the straight path. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa